How to fix a relationship. Okay, while we're still waiting for something to happen out in the real world, let's deal with this topic because I got a request, I guess. I'm taking requests from one of our followers. And they said, well, can you talk about relationships and relationships that you want to maintain and that you want to be in, but that are falling apart. And the more you try to fix this relationship, the worse it gets, the more frustrating it gets, and you spend more time apart, and pretty soon you've allowed other people to enter into your lives, and now your relationship's even more painful and difficult, and now it's not even, you can't even get back together again. So what is the problem with those types of relationships? I think I've just described most every single type of relationship, or every single relationship up until you find one that works and you settle down with that person, maybe even marry the person, and you grow old together and you die holding hands when you're 120 years old together. So if that's been your experience, and it probably has, where did you go wrong? Why is it so frustrating, and why is it so common? I'll give you an example. You say something like, hey, isn't that dress a little bit too small for you, or a little too tight? And your girlfriend immediately just gets really upset and defensive and says, what, you think I'm fat? You're not attracted to me anymore, are you? You haven't been attracted to me for months now. You don't look at me the same way, this, that, and the other. All of a sudden you get into this huge argument. Or the other way around. Your girlfriend says, hey, no, you don't have to buy me that. Your girlfriend says, no, I don't want you to buy me that. And you think, what? You don't like it? What about the last couple things that I bought for you? You don't like those either? Did you get the same gift from somebody else? Do you think I can't afford it? Do you think I'm not making enough money? Am I not as rich and successful as your last 3 boyfriends? All of a sudden it just conflagrates, doesn't it? It just catches fire. There's this one YouTube video of a bunch of kids trying to pour cups of water on the fire in a lawn, and it just burns up the whole neighborhood. I don't know if you've seen that, but tiny little patch of fire just instantly takes over the whole neighborhood. Does that describe your relationship? If it does, here's the problem. Does it feel like you're living in different universes? Does it feel like you're in 2 different worlds when this kind of miscommunication happens, and it happens all the time? I mean, you're in the same physical space, right? You're in the same room, or you're in the same house, or you're in the same car when these arguments happen. You're in the same 3-dimensional space. And you're there at the same time. It's not like you just sent a text message that could easily be misinterpreted, or a tweet that can easily be misinterpreted hours later, or a week later when you get this visible text message. You're in the same place. So basically, you're in the same 3-dimensional space, you're in the same 4-dimensional timeline, but guess what? You're not in the same 5th-dimensional universe. Your 5th chakras are not aligned, in other words, to use ancient Vedic metaphorology. You're in different universes. It's kind of like Inception, or it's kind of like, was it Inception or Interstellar, where, I think it's Inception, where he ends up inside a book or something, in the book shelf, and he's there, he's able to make the book do things and make noises and stuff, but he can't actually come out and interact with the people in that room. Anyway, you know what I'm saying, right? This is your situation. When you're in the same place and time, but your communication goes way off kilter. So what's wrong? And eventually I'm going to have to explain to you, we'll have to go through a discussion of what the 5th chakra is, or the 5th dimension is, because science just, quantum physicists haven't gotten around to understanding it or being able to package it up in language yet, like the Vedic masters or the Taoist masters have. So we'll modern deify it at some point in another video, but for now, in order to understand why you're having these conversational impasses where every single thing you say seems to just make things worse, you say, no, baby, you're not fat. Wait, why did you say fat that way? Why did you put extra emphasis on the F on fat? You really think I'm fat, don't you? There's nothing you can say. No, I don't think you're poor. I'm perfectly happy with the amount of money you make. The amount of money I make? Like, how long have you been thinking about the amount of money I make? I'm going to get a raise this year. I know I am. I mean, Charlie got a raise last year, and the year before that, Jim got a raise. So it's my turn to get a raise. I'm going to get a raise. What, you don't believe me? You doubt me? All of a sudden, and your girlfriend's just sitting like, what the hell is happening? It's like, am I even in the same universe with this person right now? And so you end up with these huge, just flabbergasting, jaw-dropping situations where, that's not what I said. But all of a sudden, this person, the person that you love, that you're in a relationship with, is off in a totally different world. They're off on a tangent, in a tangential world. That's why we say they're literally in a different universe in the fifth dimension. So only your bodies and your timelines are connected, but hey, it's like you're in totally different realities. It's like the new Spider-Man animation. It's exactly like that. So why is that? How does that happen? And how do you unify those fifth dimensional universes? So how do you do that quantum leap jump between universes that you can feel, that you've actually seen and noticed and experienced? To answer that question, we have to explain what happens in the mind. What happens to the mind? How the mind works. When the mind is new and fresh, or just when it's new. And there are varying degrees of this too. Not all minds, in fact, it's probably safer to say every brain, every mind is just born differently. They're all born differently. And so if we're just going to isolate one criteria of a mind, let's use malleability or formability or adaptability. Like this, like the sand. Like the sand on the beach. Everyone's brain is born like sand on the beach. As you grow up, things that impact you tend to make certain synapses fire, and when this synapse fires and that synapse fires at the same time, guess what? They create a connection. It's kind of like someone just scratched a line in the sand of your mind. As a kid that's only 1 year old or 2 years old, you see your parents fighting, or maybe you're 3 years old. Now you have a grasp of language. You're starting to understand language. Man, all this micro smog from China again is just awful. Anyway, so excuse my throat clearing. So you're just a passive whiteboard. You're just a passive clean slate. And so people around you will literally graffiti your mind with events, with pointal relationships. In other words, with incidental relationships, with relationships that are not the rule, they're exceptional relationships. Like, for instance, if someone says my dress is too small, that literally means that I'm fat. If you have this realization from the age of 3, if you have this false equivalency, if this, then that. If bird shit's above me, then I get bird shit on my forehead. If man says dress small, then man means I'm fat. So these are false equivalencies, right? It could mean anything. It could just mean that the dress is actually literally too small. Maybe washed it in hot water and doesn't want to tell you he washed it in hot water. So he doesn't really want you to try the dress on because he's embarrassed, or you know what I'm saying? So there could be a million different things that could be happening, and yet you think that X means Y. X always must equal Y, when X can equal anything. That's why they call it X. Only 1 can always equal 1. X can equal anything. So these false equivalencies get drawn in the sand of your mind ever since you're born, ever since you're a child, and all these conditions happen around you that define how you're going to receive communication. So if you've noticed that, man, I just cannot talk with this person, I just cannot have a conversation with this person. And then if you're more aware and alert and awake, you'll notice, oh my God, we just bring out each other's insecurities. And then if you're even more awake, you notice, hey, my last 5 boyfriends just scratched on, they just kept chiseling at, they just kept poking at all my most inflamed, tender insecurities. Why do I keep falling in love with men that keep pouring salt precisely on my insecurities, my wounds? Or why do I keep falling in love with women that keep testing my insecurities, that make me feel tiny and worthless? Well, I'll just answer that question so we can move on. It's because you want to overcome. It's not a character flaw. It's not. You might think, hey, I keep falling in love with men or women that keep testing my insecurities and bringing back my childhood traumas. I must be dysfunctional. I must crave this. No, actually, you're fantastic. You're actually the most inspired and driven, successful person on this planet. Because if you weren't driven, inspired, and successful, why would you continue to keep putting yourself in these inconceivably difficult, painful situations? Because you believe that at one point you will be able to overcome, break through, and heal that part of your psyche, heal that part of your being. That's why you keep doing it. You can't keep you can't keep butting your head up against a brick wall and having your forehead bleed down into your tongue, and where you can feel that metallic tinge of blood dripping from your forehead, unless you have the will and the knowledge that eventually you'll break through and you'll have this big, brand new, open, wide space in front of you. So if you do continually end up in the same types of relationships, good for you. Good for you. This is how you break out, so that you can start healing that wound. What would happen if you poured water into this shape? You just took some ocean water, took a cup of ocean water and said, hey, I have something to tell you. Hey, your dress is too small. And you just pour the water. Guess what? The water will form into the shape of this anchor, and it'll hold you down. It'll literally go right back to the anchor, right back to where it was, and no matter where you pour the water on the anchor, it'll fill the anchor and turn it back into an anchor. So you could literally, for someone that has let's say you're in a relationship with someone who's afraid of being fat, afraid of being thought of as fat. You could literally say something like, hey, can you close that window? It's kind of cold in here. And she'll just go off, or he'll just go off. What? Are you saying I'm fat? You think it's not cold for me because I have an extra layer of fat? And all of a sudden you end up in this massive, insane fight. And you just can't go on. And the next person that you end up in a relationship with, you break up with this person, your next person has, I don't know, a smelly left foot issue or a hairy right elbow issue that just everything you break up. Hey, can you cut me another piece of bread? What, you think my elbow is too hairy? It just goes off, right? This is how you overcome that. Now that you know what the problem is, every time you say something, it triggers this memory in that person's mind. That's your problem. This person that you love, this person that you actually feel, and if this is your memory, if this is your mind that I'm pointing to, if the sand looks like you, and every time someone says something, you're awake enough. Most people aren't even awake enough to notice what they're doing. Most people just say, hey, why is it that guys that like fat chicks fall in love with me and then dump me because I'm fat? Guess what? That's all happening in your mind. They just love you, and all of a sudden you think they're fixated on being fat. You're the one that's fixated on being fat. Okay? So, or short, or rich, or poor, or too pretty, or too smart, or too poor at math, or whatever your particular fixation is. I'm just talking about fat. How do you get over this situation? If this is your mind, you need to do one of two things. You need to either keep your mind really, really soft, and as you get older, your mind gets less malleable. Your mind gets less soft like sand. It gets harder and turns into concrete. And so this, you can't ever get rid of. So what you basically have to, what do you do with concrete? Well, you just take a pile driver to it. You take a one of those concrete buster things to it, and you just go da 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 da, and you just break up the concrete, and you just pulverize it, turn it into dust. Is the only thing you do. If that's your mind, how traumatic is that to your mind? You have to literally remake your mind. Does that sound familiar? If you're a raised Christian, that's called being born again. You have to just destroy your mind, your psyche, your being, and be born again. If you're Buddhist or if you're Hindu, it's called being reincarnated. You have to make yourself up anew again. And if you're of different Nordic mythology, it's called phoenix. You end up burning yourself, and then you end up being reborn as the phoenix. If you're of a Viking or Celtic mythology, all of our ancestors, all of our wise men, women, masters knew this, that in order to create your own life, you have to destroy the patterns that were involuntarily tattooed upon your mind when you were helpless, when you were a child. Now, how do you do that? That's a topic in another video. But what if you're the person, this isn't your mind, but this is the mind of your loved one, your girlfriend or your boyfriend, who every time you say something, they misinterpret it and it turns into a fight. Before you pour water into this thing, water is what you want to say, okay? Water is what you're going to say. You want to say, hey, is your dress too small? I prefer that you not wear that dress. That's what you want to say. That's the water. And the moment you say it, all of a sudden it's going to get misinterpreted and turned into an anchor, right? So what do? Real simple. It's the same thing you do to this plot of sand. You first draw new lines into the sand before you pour the water in. Turn this into a happy face. Turn this into, I don't know, the nose of a puppy dog, and put big eyes and put big ears around it. And then pour the water in. Turn this into anything else you want. And then pour the... I don't get it. What do you mean? Hey, baby. about that, about our high school reunion we're going to. I'm super, super proud to show all my high school buddies, introduce all my high school buddies to my soulmate, the girl of my dreams. I mean, when I tell these guys, when I introduce you to these guys, they're going to know instantly that you're my dream girl. I've been talking about you since 15 years before I met you. I've been describing exactly you, and the moment they meet you and see you and even get to know you, they'll know that, hey, I found my soulmate and I was finally successful. One of my guy friends, Biff, he's on his second divorce. Charlie's on his third divorce, and I think he's turning gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And so you start that way. You start building a different picture. You see? You start building a different picture. And then you finalize the context. And you say, but to be honest with you, my buddy Mike, he's a really close friend of mine, but I gotta tell you, he and I have exactly the same taste in women. And he's always been taking my girlfriends. He's always been cock-blocking me and taking my girlfriends from me. And I don't know, he's really cool besides that. He's got this really weird thing where, and he's gonna, the moment he sees you, he's gonna fall in love with you. So I'm really insecure. I wish, you know, maybe you showed less of your legs, because your legs are the most beautiful legs in the world. So maybe, could you wear a longer dress for me? You see how that changes the entire context? Even if she has a fat complex, if you put it that way, if you redraw the lines in the sand before you put the water in, hey, can you change? Is that dress? Can you just wear a different dress? Pour the water in. Now it fills the sand with a different image in her mind. That's how you communicate. That's how you save a relationship that you want to save. Is that a lot of work? Yeah, it's a lot of work. Relationships are a lot of work. Can you find a girlfriend or a boyfriend that doesn't have all these weird issues about insecurity of their financial prowess, their sexual prowess, their bald spot, their, I don't know, their beer belly, a girl that, or her height, or her hair color, or her skin condition, whatever. Can you find somebody without any of these weird insecurities so that you can just say whatever the hell you want and they'll just take it at face value? What you're trying to do is marry the Buddha. If that's your goal, good luck to you. But otherwise, if you don't want to wait until you're enlightened yourself on your, 99th lifetime, and you want to be happy now, this is what you have to do when you communicate in a relationship. This is how the mind works. So, what if this is you, though? What if this is you? This is your mind. This is your plot of sand. And you know that you have these relationships where the moment someone says this, you get triggered this way. And you can't help but remembering your childhood abuses. You can't help but remembering your failed last 17 relationships. How do I just overcome being triggered by just this one thing? Totally different context, totally different conversation. And that one is going to... That's literally discussing the rebirth of the mind. That's literally about remaking the mind and being born again or reincarnated or mentally, psychologically, emotionally. Starting over from scratch and doing so in a condition where you control the inputs to your mind. So once you pulverize this cement, imagine this is turned into cement. Once you take a sledgehammer to it and you just pulverize this and turn this into dust, and you turn it into, what's that sand that you turn into cement, whatever it is, you turn it back into that sand that you turn into cement. I think that's how cement works. I don't know much about cement construction. You have to create a condition where nobody draws these ugly anchors into the sand of your mind and your emotions ever again. So you've got to tightly control, quality control your plot of sand. How do you do that? How do you break your mind? And not only that, but how do you draw what lines are in the mind of someone like Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Steve Jobs that made them so successful at wealth, that made, I don't know, some guy, my dad, so successful at love with my mom, my gym teacher, who's now 93 years old and can still outrun me and outbox me, so successful with his physical body and health. What kinds of impressions are in the sand of their mind and their psyche, and how did they draw those impressions into the sand of their mind and their psyche, is going to take a lot more videos. So subscribe to this YouTube if you want to get into it, and we'll get into it as soon as we have time.